Professor Bart K, thank you so much for coming over and to my channel, because I've done 2 interviews on your channel. So very grateful that you're reciprocating the favor. I'm very excited for our chat. But first, let's have our audience get familiarized with your background, because you have a pretty extensive academic background. So can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. So first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. In terms of my background, such that it is, I was in academia for about 25 years up until 2018, when I hung up my robes and thought better of it and decided to be an influencer on the YouTubes, etc. instead. Mainly because I spent my entire academic career swimming against the current of disinformation, indoctrination, nonsense, etc. And finally had a guts full of it by that stage. I have the dubious honor of holding 3 advanced research degrees, which I guess is a bit uncommon. They are in the physiology of rest and exercise, cardiovascular pathophysiology in particular, and in statistics and research design. So that's kind of my gambit of expertise, if you like. Obviously, I have a list of peer-reviewed publications. I've been involved in external consultancy, as you do in academia, several multi-million-dollar events, I guess, or consultancy events over the years with all sorts of organizations. What else? Lots of teaching.
So that's for academia, and it's been a full-time career for 25 years, which is a very long time. So
sure.
How did you transition, first of all, personally, into a carnivore diet, and then how did that affect your decision, obviously, to leave academia?
Yeah. Okay. So I started undertaking the ketogenic lifestyle, ketogenic dietary approach, some 25 years ago. So well before it was cool or trendy, or before people had sort of caught on to that. Put it this way, when I started the ketogenic diet, Professor Tim Noakes was still telling people to eat carbs, and lots of them. That's how long ago it was.
Wow.
So I've been doing that for a very, very long time. From there, when I discovered the idea that actually we should be entirely carnivorous and intake no plant material to speak of whatsoever in our diets, that wasn't really much of a revelation to me. That kind of made sense. It was like, oh, well, yeah, of course. And that was on the back of discovering some anthropological evidence that was so in our makeup as human beings from as far back as at least 350,000 years ago, which is when it's thought human beings first walked the earth in our current speciation, in our current form. And the implication from that is you can actually go back about 4.5 million years through various speciations very close to human beings, but not quite human beings yet. And it seems like we've eaten almost nothing but the flesh and fat of largely the large ruminant animals, with some seafood thrown in depending where people lived geographically, some poultry and other birds, some smaller animals. Pigs played a bit of a role as well, but largely it was large ruminants. Firstly, woolly mammoths, and then smaller, large ruminants after the mammoths were all gone, sort of thing. And so that kind of, for me, was like, well, okay, positive and negative selection pressures. If a species eats almost nothing but the flesh and fat of animals, then that species becomes absolutely geared to doing that. That's how natural selection works. And then I went to the comparative anatomy, the comparative physiology, the organ systems, the biological energy production pathways that human beings have, etc. It all lined up for me. It was like, well, okay, this is obvious. And everything that exists in the area of human nutrition science, and I give it that one because it's not a science. Human nutrition is an ideology. It's an area of, fundamentally, it's an area of absolutely pseudoscientific claptrappery that is absolutely underpinned by nothing but money from some people with a lot of it.
Yeah.
There is very little to no science in human nutrition science. So you have to go outside of that area to get the actual answer, the actual science, and that's anthropology, that's comparative anatomy and physiology, that's organ systems, that's biological pathways, none of which are accurately described, taught within human nutrition science whatsoever. So for me, it was all, light bulbs, that makes sense. When I sat through several undergraduate papers in human physiology as part of my sport and exercise science undergraduate degree, because, you know, obviously you need lots of carbs to do exercise, they teach you. No, you don't. You sit through all of this nonsense. And I was just sitting there at the time going, even as an undergraduate student at that time, I was going, this does not make sense. This is rubbish.
Wow.
And so I went and checked it out for myself and had a look around the actual science outside of the so-called nutrition science and confirmed it for myself. This is absolute rubbish. And so I spent 25 years swimming against the current, teaching that to students and getting told off by deans for doing it, to which my response was always, have you ever heard of academic freedom? It's enshrined in the law of basically every westernized nation around the world. It says an academic is entitled, as of right by law, to hold and espouse any opinion they should see fit, whether it be popular or not.
Well, see, I did not know that. You should tell me more about that, because I'm in kind of like where you were before you left.
Right, so I'm talking about the law of academic freedom that exists in the UK and all her colonies. So we're talking Australia, New Zealand, Canada, all of those, you know, all the Commonwealth countries. There is a parallel law in the United States as well. I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but basically it says the same thing. It says if you are an academic working in an academic institution, teaching people in any area of endeavor whatsoever, you are entitled to any opinion you should see fit. And nobody has the right to tell you not to espouse it, whether it be popular or otherwise.
That is great news. Thank you for sharing that.
Not at all. So I would suggest you go and check that with the legal beagles in the States if you want to use it at any stage, because I'm not sure of the American law, but absolutely in all the Commonwealth countries, it's absolutely enshrined.
Interesting. So you got into ketogenic dieting just because it made sense to you, but was there any personal conditions that it helped you with that kind of solidified that?
Yeah. I have a long history of digestive disorders, starting really in childhood, but becoming more obvious in my teenage years and absolutely inescapable in my 20s and early 30s, if you like. In my life, I have experienced hiatus hernias. I've had diverticular disease, diverticulitis, diverticulosis, both of those. As a teenager, I had idiopathic pancreatitis. Now, normally pancreatitis is associated with advanced alcoholism. So obviously as a teenager, nope. So that's why they appended the label idiopathic. And for those that don't know what that means, idiopathic is a medical term for we don't know what the cause is. But doctors can't say we don't know because that makes them look like idiots. So they have to say a clever word like idiopathic. So people go, oh, it's idiopathic. Okay, thanks, doc. So I had that. I've had gluten intolerance. I've had full-blown Crohn's disease from various, grains and things as well. I've had moderate overweightness at times due to the intake of carbohydrates.
That's a lot to deal with.
I don't want to forget anything. There's probably some things I've forgotten, but I've had a slew of problems with my alimentary tract, with my digestive system.
Did that affect anxiety or depression? Because oftentimes when you have digestive
Thank
issues,
you. Yes, that's the stuff I forgot. I also have a long history of mental health issues in younger years, with anxiety, with bipolar disorder. At one point, I was suffering from agoraphobia to such a degree that I actually didn't leave my house for a year.
Yeah, we should define, I guess, agoraphobia also.
Yeah, that's the fear of stepping outside your house, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I stayed in the house for a year. I never left the house, not even into the garden. Yeah.
That's pretty severe.
Yeah, it was. It was craziness, literally.
How old were you when that happened?
That was in my late 20s, actually.
Wow. So you were already like getting your PhDs and all that stuff and working. So how did that work along with your career?
Yeah, that particular period of time was a year when I had stepped outside of working at all because I wasn't mentally well enough to be working. I decided to take a gap year in my career. I was between one contract and starting another contract, which I hadn't applied for yet.
Yeah.
And I decided, I need to stay in the house for a year. So I did that and hit under, and I basically lived on investments and stuff for a year or so. It made a bit of a hole in things, obviously. But we've recovered from that since. Okay. I'm not necessarily suggesting it was a good idea or indicated, but it was what I needed to do at the time. So that's what I did. I had a very supportive partner at the time as well, who was still working. So that helped.
Yeah.
Not that she was, in a high paid job or anything like that, but it was enough to keep the wolves off. We had some investments. So that was that.
Yeah.
So that was probably about the worst that my mental health got. Well, possibly.
Wow.
A few years after that, I got into a bad marriage, which I got into for all the wrong reasons. And that led to another period of really not so good mental health. At the time, I was also on the other side of the world. I was living in the UK because that's where said wife came from and she wanted to go back there. So we did. So I was kind of isolated from my home, which is here in New Zealand, my friends and associates down here, my family down here. So it was just me and her, and it was not a good situation. And so anyway, we got out of that. We sorted that one out at extensive cost, believe you me, goodness. Anyway, things are much better now. Yeah.
Wow. So how then did the transition happen from a ketogenic diet to a carnivore diet? What were additional improvements?
Yeah. Okay. So the ketovore approach, you take out most of the carbohydrates and you're limited to 50 grams or less of carbohydrates a day is the typical ketogenic approach. So in effect, that takes most plant materials out of the diet. Plant materials are absolutely the problem for most people. No two ways about it, unequivocally, no question. Excuse me. If you consume any significant amount of plant material in your diet, you will experience a problem from doing that at some point. In my mind, there is no question of that. Why do I say that? Because plants are toxic. They contain plant toxins, they contain anti-nutrients, they contain pro-inflammatory substances. Plants do not want you to eat them. They are not here to feed you. They are here to procreate to the next generation of their species, and you eating them is a damned inconvenience, and so they will discourage you from doing it. The animals that eat the most plants, or the most plant material in the world, are actually some of the smallest. They are the insects at large. Most plant toxins are designed to kill insects very quickly, and they do very effectively. They don't kill human beings quite so effectively or quite so quickly because we're much more robust than most insects. However, they will kill you slowly and painfully over a lifetime. No two ways about it. Fact. Take most of those plants out of your diet and your health improves miraculously. It gets you to sort of, well, in my case, it's an N equals 1 sort of situation. Everyone's a bit different in terms of exactly where you'll get to if you just go keto. If you go keto and stick to it, if you're at 50 grams a day or less, 20 grams is even better, you'll get, in my estimation, to somewhere around about maybe 80, maybe 85% healthy if you're lucky. You'll think you're great. You'll think you're 100% healthy at that stage, but you're actually not, because you don't know how much better still it can be. If you take that last 20 to 50 grams of carbohydrates and plant material out of your diet altogether and say, okay, I don't need you, be gone, Satan, then you'll find that there is another vast improvement again, up to 150% health.
Yeah.
You'll think, you'll think you're at 80, 85%. What you think is that like a diet that's 95% carnivore adherent would get you 95% health. It doesn't. There is a completely unfair penalty against your health for that 5% transgression against your biological design, your heritage, really, as a human being. It's only in the last 8,000 years that we have consumed any amount of plant material at all. And that's a result of the agrarian revolution, which is the biggest mistake human beings have ever made. It was absolutely disastrous for our health as a species. Our brains got smaller, our stature got shorter, our skeletal structure got smaller, our muscularity went down, our jaw lines and mouths shrunk, our teeth became all crammed up and got diseased. We got dental caries, holes in our teeth from the sugar all over our teeth that the bacteria have been turning into acid and eating our teeth away. All the degenerative diseases, all the inflammatory diseases, heart disease, obesity, diabetes, all of them are down to carbohydrate consumption, plain and simple.
Yeah.
So when you finally make that step and go, yep, it makes sense, I now understand the biology of human beings, how much carbohydrate per day do human beings require to survive and thrive? And when I say how much carbohydrate, I mean how much carbohydrate in the diet. How much do you need to eat every day to survive, be healthy, have a long life, and thrive? The answer is not 1 gram ever. None. You have all the biological pathways to generate all the glucose you require for brain function, for muscle function, for other organ functions and things like that yourself, and you can make all that carbohydrate from non-carbohydrate sources. Any exogenous, meaning exterior to the body, any exogenous carbohydrate that you put into your mouth is poison. You don't need it. It will kill you over a lifetime. So once you work that out, which I did about 6.5 years ago,
better.
gravy train. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this is a common theme also. It's very difficult for people to go from a traditional diet where they're eating either high or even moderate amounts of carbohydrates towards a full-blown carnivore diet. So I feel that ketogenic diet notion really helped a lot of people transition, because it kind of helped everybody understand the basics of ketosis first. And once we understood that, because everybody's been brainwashed that sugar is your main energy source, once we understood what ketosis is, that it's our natural source of fuel, we are born on a ketogenic diet. As long as you are breastfed, breast milk is designed to keep the baby in a ketosis state. So after that kind of sunk in, people now realize, like, yes, this was a step in the right direction. I feel better. It makes sense, but I can do even better now with a carnivore diet. So this is really exciting. And I can already see there's a lot of interest, because it's not like I started out with my YouTube channel talking about carnivore diets. I'm not sure if you started out talking about carnivore diets from the get-go, but you did? Oh, okay. So when I started, I was just still in that ketosis state and ketogenic diets. And so I have old videos about that. And as I transitioned into a ketovore diet. I was like, this is interesting. And then that's when I was starting to dip my toe, right, into carnivores. And then when I did carnivore diets, you can truly see that there is a lot more interest in carnivore diets. And so now, not only am I more convinced, but like I see people also more convinced about that. So it's exciting.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. So what do you think are the biggest deterrents still for people on a carnivore, like even people on the carnivore diet that might even have seen a lot of benefit are still maybe worried about their cholesterol and triglyceride, or right, the cardiovascular impact of that diet? So
yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that one of the biggest deterrents for people is still the vast criminal disinformation, misinformation, propaganda, spin doctrine that is being espoused largely by a group of individuals that I refer to as the Church of Anorexia Vegana. A group of individuals who want to promote a plant-based diet because they don't even have enough belief in themselves to even say vegan anymore, because of the negative connotations of, because of the way vegans behave, basically. So now they're saying plant-based, and also a lot of them are adding some animal foods in there, because actually you cannot thrive and do well without plant foods in your diet. It is impossible. A vegan diet is vastly, grossly destitute of nutrient required on a daily basis by human beings. And they have the gall to suggest, number one, that meat will cause cancer, for which there is absolutely no scientific evidence in existence of any nature whatsoever in the literature. Never has been and never will be. It is a lie. It is propaganda. They will say saturated fat is bad for you. No, it isn't. We've been living on saturated fat almost exclusively for 4.5 million years. We are absolutely geared for it. It is absolutely the design of our bodies to gain the vast majority of our energy from saturated fat of animals. No, it's not bad for you. They'll say it'll give you heart disease, it'll clog your arteries. No, let's do an experiment at home, shall we? Get some saturated animal fat, put it in a container, which you then put that container in a bath of water at 37 degrees Celsius. What you'll find is that saturated fat will liquefy at that temperature, absolutely. Now what I'd like you to do is get a tube like that and try and clog that tube up with that liquid saturated fat, which is very, very slippery. Good luck. Okay, that's not going to happen. Oh, yes, but saturated fat raises your cholesterol. Great. Cholesterol doesn't cause heart disease either. There is no evidence for that. There never has been any evidence for that. It's the same propaganda. It's the same spin doctrine. It's the same ridiculous nonsense. Science that proves cause and effect is experimental. You have to go, if you want to prove that saturated fat or cholesterol causes heart disease, here's what you have to do. You have to take genetically identical sets of twins at birth, a large number of sets of twins, because you need statistical power. You need to lock those twins, one in one lab, one in another lab. You need to have the conditions in those labs absolutely identical down to every single factor. Hours of light, color of light, wavelengths of light, waking and sleeping hours, activity levels, every single aspect of the diet except for the intake of cholesterol, etc., 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 etc. And you need to do that for their entire lives to see which one dies quicker than the other one of heart disease. Good luck getting that past an ethics committee. You're not going to get that past an ethics committee. And if you do get it past an ethics committee, number one, what's wrong with that ethics committee? Because they shouldn't allow that. And number two, where the hell are you going to get the money to fund that study? Number three, the practicalities of that make it prohibitive. We're not going to do any science on cholesterol or saturated fat anytime, ever. It's not going to happen. What we have is ideology. We have a thing called epidemiology, which is a pseudoscience of the highest order when you're talking about the epidemiology of human nutrition. Other branches of epidemiology, much more robust. Nutritional epidemiology, absolute garbage from start to finish. Yeah. And I'm speaking now as both a professor of cardiovascular pathophysiology and also a professor of statistics and statistical inference, okay? So you can put this in the bank. It is garbage. Nonsense. So there's no evidence whatsoever linking causally saturated fat or cholesterol with heart disease in a cause and effect nature. You can relax about that. It is absolute rubbish. It's propaganda. It's fear-mongering. It's designed to get you to comply with our edict as high priests of the Church of Anorexia Vegana. Eat plants, don't eat animals. Plants are good, animals are bad. Okay? That's all they've got. That's their entire argument. And then they'll say things like blue zones, though, which is another associative mishmash, another ill-disciplined bunch of non-scientific claptrappery to try and convince you that it is so. You know, basically, this is stuff that's designed to prey on people who don't have the confidence in themselves or the exposure to scientific discipline, training in scientific discipline, to point to the flaws and go, hang on, Charlie Brown, just a minute here. So relax about all of that stuff. That's the biggest problem that we're up against. That's basically what my channel's all about. My channel really is all about making videos, responding to these, I'm going to call them criminals, because they are absolute criminal misanthropists, making videos about how saturated fat's bad and cholesterol's bad and eating meat is bad and will kill you and all this kind of stuff. And I do a sort of point-wise, you know, pause and respond point-wise type video thing. It's called Who's Wrong on the Interwebs often. So that's kind of my bread and butter on my main YouTube channel. Right. Also, fair warning, if people want to go and subscribe to my YouTube channel and watch my videos, fair warning, I tend to use a lot of very, very short words.
Right.
I do it for clicks.
Right.
I do it for clicks. It works. People like it. People think it's funny. Okay, fine. Yeah.
It is fun. It is very entertaining. And a lot of people enjoy that because you don't really have that flexibility on a lot of other outlets except YouTube, you know, like very few platforms. I will make sure for sure to post put all of your, you know, social media handles, especially your
awesome.
YouTube. You're not very active on Instagram though, I've noticed, right?
No, not really.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah.
I keep being told I should be, but whatever.
Yeah.
It's a time issue.
Right. Although, if you think about it, it's very easy. It's actually much easier to post like one content per day. I've noticed that. Maybe like a graph or something compared to an hour-long interview, you know, or
Sure.
so it's just something to think about. So, what about fiber? Because, you know, the heart disease, we covered that. The fact that nutrition science, as you said, is not really a science because of the epidemiology, it's an ideology. We covered that. What about fiber? Somebody told me the other day that I should have a salad.
Yeah. Okay.
Here on my YouTube channel.
Let's talk about what the exact requirement on a daily basis for human beings to thrive and survive and have great bowel function is in terms of grams of fiber per day that's required. Same number as carbohydrates. Not 1 gram of fiber ever is required by the human enteric system. Okay. In fact, if anything, the evidence would point in the direction of fiber being contraindicated, meaning don't do that. There is really one and only one even vaguely well-controlled sort of pseudo-clinical study available in the literature. It's the one that Dr. Paul Mason from Australia talks about a lot on his channel. It's the one where they took 64 individuals with, here's that word again, idiopathic constipation. So these are people who are presenting at the outset with constipation. These are people who are having a bowel movement sometimes once a week, sort of thing. And they're obviously experiencing bloating, bleeding, inflammation, all sorts of really nasty things with their enteric system. They're chronically systemically inflamed. They're not healthy people. It's not going well here, boys and girls, is what we're saying.
They're bloated all the time.
Yeah, bloated, uncomfortable, in pain, full of gas, you know, all of this nonsense that
and by the way, I want everybody to pay attention now to what you're going to say, because there's a trend now with regards to bloating. Let's normalize bloating. Bloating is normal, you know, so pay attention to what Professor Bart K is about to tell us right now.
Yeah, well, number one, bloating is not normal at all. Anyway, here's what they did. They split the 64 idiopathic constipation people into 4 otherwise reasonably homogeneous, meaning similar groupings within the groups. They had 4 groups of individuals out of their 64 total individuals. They told group A to increase their fiber. Increase your fiber is what they told group A. They told group B to maintain the exact same diet that they had been eating before they presented. Control group, basically. They told group C, we want you to halve your fiber intake. They told group D, we want you to remove every single gram of fiber from your diet. Report back in 2 weeks or whatever it was, something I can't remember the exact time frame. Anyway, here's what happened. Group A, the people that increased their fiber, their symptoms of their idiopathic constipation got worse. They got more bloated, they had more anal bleeding, they had less bowel movements, they were more gummed up, they were more uncomfortable, they had more pain, more discomfort, more chronic systemic inflammation. Everything got worse because they increased their fiber. The people that continued with the same diet, the same exact amount of fiber, nothing changed. Shock, horror. That's what control groups do. The people that halved their fiber had basically a 50% reduction in all their symptoms. And the people that removed every single gram of fiber from their diet whatsoever had full and complete remission of all symptoms, every single one of them, without exception. Whoops. Oh dear.
100% cure rate.
100% remission of all symptoms in every single subject. None of them had a single remaining symptom after that. I think it was a 2-week period.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Exactly.
Whoopsie daisy.
Exactly.
So the people that will say, yeah, but hang on, you need to feed the good bacteria in your guts with fiber, they'll say. They need short chain fatty acids, to which I say, yes, they do. What kind of short chain fatty acids would those be? Which most people have to go and look up, because most people that think they're oh so very clever and want to talk to you about fiber and its requirement don't know the answer to that. So they will go and look it up, and then they'll come back to me and proudly say, I've looked it up. Yes, what's the answer? They say butyric acid. I say, great, butyric acid, fantastic. What happens when you don't consume any carbohydrates in your diet at all? Oh, well, you go into a state called ketosis. Do you, I say? And what is one of the major ketone bodies that's produced during ketosis? They go, oh, beta-hydroxybutyrate.
Voila.
I go, ah.
Do they realize it?
Oh.
Do they like realize it at that point? Once
Usually
they
they still need to explain stuff. So what? I said, well, you just said butyric acid.
right.
Yes. Okay. So if you're going to oxidize butyric acid for energy in your enteric cells in your colon, the first metabolic step is that butyric acid, or butyrate as it is actually. First of all, it gets transmuted metabolically into beta hydroxybutyrate, which is what ketosis generates directly. The only difference is the beta hydroxybutyrate is fed to the enteric cell from the blood side and not from the enteric side. The cell doesn't care what side it comes from. It's still the same stuff. Okay. Right. I said that to Garth Davis one day in an interview, and he went,
yeah. Yeah.
that was just funny as hell.
There you have it. There is no good reason to ever consume vegetables or plant foods in general. Now, if you want to consume fruits, what would you say about that? Because this is a hot topic, right?
Don't is what I would say.
Yeah. And can you like share why? Because I know there are very well-known people in this sphere that are arguing that it's okay.
It will prove wrong.
How much?
Prove wrong. No, you shouldn't eat fruit. Fruit contains fructose. Fructose is the worst carbohydrate of any kind that you can possibly consume. Reason being is it's metabolized slightly differently from all the other carbohydrates in that it does not become glucose. It does not go through all of that side of things. Fructose can only be metabolized directly in the liver, and the liver directly metabolizes it to triacylglyceride, in other words, fat, for direct storage in your adipose tissue, in other words, your fat cells. And as such, it will predispose you to both fatty liver syndrome, which is not good, and also to a heightened risk, if you like, of cardiovascular disease and obesity-related disorders, if it's combined in certain ways with other foods as well. There is no indication for fructose in the diet. It's bad stuff. Bad stuff altogether. Okay, there's less fructose in fruit than you will find in high fructose corn syrup. Sure, absolutely. But I mean, and they say that the dose makes the poison. Sure, absolutely. Nonetheless, why would you pour any amount of a known toxin down your neck whatsoever?
Yeah.
Unless you listen to someone like Rhonda Patrick, who frankly is a bit of a fool. But that's for another day. Poor Mises. There are enough stresses on our body in modern life. We don't need to add extra ones. Thanks, Rhonda. Okay, so there's that. The second problem with fruit is it contains fiber. And fiber is contraindicated. We've covered that. Fiber is not good for you. Fiber will mess up your enteric function. Fiber is pro-inflammatory. Fiber leads to leaky gut syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In my case, it leads to constipation, which
absolutely, there you go.
All my life, like who would have thought? And also, I think people need to remember the fruits that we ate throughout evolution was, if we ever came across them for a very short period of time, it was not even close to the level of sweetness that we
Yeah.
find in the modern fruits. So
Absolutely.
we have created those cultivars that are way sweeter because they taste better and they're more addictive. So from an evolutionary point of view, it's important to remember that this wasn't something our genetics has been exposed to for millions of years as well.
Yeah.
Right?
You need to realize that all commonly eaten fruits and vegetables today, every one of them is a human invention.
Yeah.
Where they are all specifically cultivated. They are all specifically selectively bred from their ancestors, which were not even remotely similar plants.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Exactly.
as such, anything that's a human invention food-wise is probably disastrous.
Yeah.
So stay away from it.
Yeah.
It will not help you. And that'll bring us to the yes, but vitamin C argument. Oh dear.
You want to say a little something about that, but for vitamin C?
Yeah, let's cover it. Okay. Vitamin C is a thing that many animals can create themselves. They have an enzyme to make their own vitamin C within their bodies, within their metabolic pathways. Human beings, among several other selected species here and there, another one is guinea pigs for some reason, I don't know why, whatever. But human beings have not got the gene to create vitamin C in their bodies. Now that tells us something. It tells us not only was it not useful, but if a gene is knocked out, gone in every single living human being, it means that there was a negative selection pressure that dictated that that gene must go for some reason. Something about that gene was killing modern human beings before they got to reproductive age. It's not just that it wasn't useful. So it's genes don't just dissolve and disappear because they're not useful. For example, these look very frugivorous. You'll often see that thing. Here's a carnivore's teeth, sharp, pointy teeth like this. Here's a horse's teeth with the big. That's a herbivore. Horses will actually happily eat meat, by the way, and so will cows if you give it to them. Here's a frugivore's teeth. Here's a human's teeth. They look frugivorous, therefore we're frugivores. Good one, Milton. No. Okay. Here's the thing. I have never sat down at my dinner table to a beautiful plate of steak and gone, hang on a minute, I can't eat this. I don't have sharp, pointy teeth like this. There's no negative selection pressure that knocks these teeth out and means that we evolve these ones back again.
Right.
We've never had these ones. It's because we actually are descended from frugivores. Yeah. But now we have these great things. We have these opposable thumbs that we can fashion a knife and a fork with. We have sharp, pointy sticks. We have never taken down woolly mammoths by diving at them with our open mouths. Never.
Yeah.
We have brains. We can communicate with one another. We can strategize. We can work as a tribe. We can throw sticks and use pointy sticks to force mammoths over the cliff. Ooh, splat, dead mammoth. Great. Feed the tribe for a week. No sharp, pointy teeth required, or claws, or any of that sort of stuff. Okay. Vitamin C, that gene is gone. It was a problem. I have a theory. I have no scientific proof for this, but here's my theory. What happens, Sarah, if you eat too much vitamin C? Most of it you urinate out, but not all of it. Some of that excess gets metabolized, doesn't it? What to?
Oxalate.
Oxalate. Hello?
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
We came down out of the trees, stopped eating fruit. We started eating meat that produced a lot of uric acid, which did the role of the antioxidant, water-based antioxidant that vitamin C was doing. Now we had too much vitamin C, big oxalate crystals, no surviving to reproductive age. That gene gets knocked out. okay, now we're human beings, now we don't have that gene. Means that we do need some vitamin C in our diets, otherwise we're going to die, because if you don't have enough vitamin C, you can't synthesize collagen, which is the most common protein in the human body. So you don't eat vitamin C, you get scurvy, your protein starts to dissolve, bleeding gums, you fall to bits, and you die.
Yeah.
Mostly, you will find that scurvy occurred in sailors who went to sea for months at a time. Notably, not the officers on the ships. It was the seamen, the seamen. I should say that clearly, shouldn't I? The sailors, the workers, because their diet was ship's biscuits. The officers were eating dried meat, which contains vitamin C.
Yeah.
In small amounts. It turns out that to prevent scurvy and death from scurvy, you need a concentration of vitamin C in your blood, actually in the nanogram range. Nanograms.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you eat a bunch of carbohydrates in your diet as well, in which case your need for vitamin C jumps up massively, up to the milligram range. So all RDIs will talk about a requirement in the milligram range, because you are presumed to be eating a mixed, healthy diet of macronutrients, which is the worst thing you can do, by the way, because of a thing called the Randall cycle. That's for another day.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Here's why that is. The receptor, if you like, the transporter that recognizes vitamin C in your blood and moves it across the cell membrane into your cells, where it does its magic, vitamin C, is a thing called GLUT4. It's the same one that's required to move glucose into your cells from out of your bloodstream. So if you've got a pile of glucose in your bloodstream that's trying to get into your cells, that will outcompete the vitamin C, meaning you need a much higher concentration of vitamin C to survive. Stop eating carbs and your vitamin C requirement goes, because it can go straight through on the GLUT4. Thank you very much. That's why people on a carnivorous diet don't get scurvy. That's why the officers on the ships did not get scurvy. They weren't eating ship's biscuits. They were eating dried meat.
Mm-hmm.
What I usually say to people is, look, in terms of this vitamin C thing, just point me, if you please, to any bona fide, backed up, medically recorded case of scurvy in a carnivorous diet eating human being. Anyone you like. We'll wait.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
Doesn't
And
happen.
even when they don't eat the organs, even
Yeah,
the
you don't need,
parts where
exactly.
the
You don't
organs-
need it.
Yeah.
Nose to tail, nose to tail. How did the last nose you ate taste, Paul? How was that last nose? Was it tasty nose?
Yeah.
Dear.
So I'm curious, has any of the previous colleagues of yours that you've spent such a long time working with ever come around? I mean, watching your health has improved. I think it might be a fair guess to say that a lot of their health has gone down over time. What has happened?
Well, some of them are dead, Sarah. Put it that way. Some of them have their health has dropped quite a lot. They're dead. Mostly, to be honest with you, I'm unfriends with all of them, pretty much. We're not in contact so much. Unfriends with most of my family.
Okay.
Unfriends, not friends anymore.
Of course.
Unfriend.
Right.
I don't follow them. They don't follow me, sort of thing. They think I'm some kind of crazy heretic, of course, and they continue to abuse their bodies as they always have done, and their health continues to slide into their eventual oblivion and death. Some of them have already shuffled off this mortal coil and have left the mortal plane already. I can't tell them I told you so, because that would be a waste of time. They wouldn't hear me. Yeah, so I mean, I can't really tell you about most of them.
Yeah.
One or two of them I have some kind of contact with here and there, but we generally agree to discuss other issues instead, frankly.
Right.
The thing with science, and especially people who are involved in science at a high level and think of themselves as highly credentialed and highly knowledgeable, is that they're fairly immutable on just about everything, actually. My professor that supervised my first postgraduate qualification, who I will always remember and be thankful to for teaching me a lot of things, he said to me that we need to realize that science progresses one funeral at a time. Because here's the thing, if I'm a high-level academic and I'm a publishing scientist and I've planted my flag somewhere, I now have to defend that hill until I die against every attack from every direction, no matter how justified. Otherwise, the second I give that up, my credibility is gone. I can only think of one academic at a high level who has ever publicly recanted and said, I was wrong. And his name is Professor Tim Noakes.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah.
I can't think of any other examples that I'm aware of. I'm sure there are others, but it's very much the exception and not the rule. So that's how it is. And if I say carbs are good, saturated fat is bad, don't eat red meat, it'll give you cancer, and I publish that somewhere, I can't then turn around and say, oops, some more.
And you would think, though, that science is the area where we should be the most flexible, right? It's not politics. We're not promising something and that, it's so strange to me.
Yeah. The very makeup of science itself suggests to me as a scientist that my responsibility when I propose, proffer a hypothesis, my responsibility is to design a research methodology which is capable of refuting that. My responsibility is to prove myself wrong. And
that's not how it is, though. Yeah.
And yet that's not how science is conducted, because science is not generally personed by those with scientific integrity and discipline. It's personed by people who have egos, careers, and reputations to protect and uphold.
Yeah.
And they will protect those things to the death. They will throw out any form of cognitive dissonance that's required to throw smoke screens up in front of their frailties and their wrongness. Money, absolutely, money. Yes.
Funded. You've done research, so maybe you can share how difficult it is to obtain grant funding and why once somebody actually gets grants from a certain place, you really want to be treading carefully because that might be the funding source for the next few years, right?
Yeah, exactly that. And also the usual adage, the usual humorous adage that's thrown out there is that 99% of all scientists agree with those who fund them in terms of their findings. Of course they do. If I get funding from, let's say, a pharmaceutical company to look into the safety and efficacy of their drug, and they give me several $1 million to do that, and I turn around and say, this thing will kill you.
Exactly.
Ain't no pharmaceutical company or any other sort of company that makes any kind of product going to give me several $1 million ever again. I'm done. Finished.
Exactly. And at least in the United States, I don't know if that's the same in other countries, a lot of research institutions, like for example, I know at the University of Miami where I did my Ph.D., they will not pay the full salary for all of their researchers. So a lot of researchers get hired, and the thing is, we'll pay part of your salary, but it is your responsibility to obtain funding to cover the rest of your salary for as long as it takes. So there's so much pressure on professors to obtain funding, and I think it was it's something like 90% rejection rate for grant proposals. When you're writing a grant proposal to get money, 90% of those often get rejected. So it's not that easy.
No.
Yeah. So that's another thing complicating matters. What are where do you see yourself in the future? Where are you taking, like, what's the direction you're taking right now?
I have permanently and irrevocably left academia. I will never work in academia again, mainly because it is so corrupt, so divorced from actual scientific integrity and scientific discipline that I could not bring myself to ever work in that environment again. I have decided, after a period of reflection, to become a social media influencer, because I thought, you know, that can't be as hard as being an academic. More fool me, goodness. Only to find that in working as a social media influencer, that there are a whole bunch of other evil influencers that you have to work against, who will work and plot against you behind the scenes and make it more difficult, nigh on impossible for you to succeed in that arena as well. And I'm talking about the major platforms. I'm talking YouTube, etc., who have processes by which they can shadow ban, they can turn down your success via algorithms. Al Gore loves his rhythms, doesn't he? They can mess with your success. They can lie straight out about your subscriber base, your numbers of views, your advertising revenue. They can, and there's no checks and balances on that. There's no way of checking. There's actually also no person that you can phone up at YouTube and say, hey, listen here, what's going on with this? It's all an electronic, faceless edifice, basically, that will allow you a certain amount of success, and they do that at their whim discretion. And so what you have to do is diversify, which I've done. So I've also taken on the promotion of a really, really good line of nutraceutical products of a supplement product nature that do fantastic magical things. And I'm also running private consultancy for people that want to talk to me about various aspects of their health, so that I can give them a perspective, not advice, not medical advice, a perspective on what they tell me, and say, if I was you, I might do this or that or the other thing. What else is going on? I also have a line of merchandise, t-shirts and things that, you know, that's the kind of thing you can do. So it makes a living. It's you know, it's not, I'm not getting fantastically rich at this point. I have a profile, I have some notoriety, I have some fame / infamy, I guess, which is nice sometimes, and other times it's not so nice. It's just a different battle, it's a different struggle. So if you do want to support me in what I'm doing, get over there and do some of those things. I'll send Sarah all the links to consultancies and merchandise, and I've got 4 or 5 different YouTube channels on different subjects as well, you know, because that's all I do in terms of, you know, making videos and stuff. So there's that, and if you want to consult with me, you can do that too. Good.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna link all that information as soon as you send it to me, if you can tonight, because that way maybe it'll go out today, hopefully.
Sweet.
Yeah, and thank you so much. I know you're probably lined up with another interview right now. So thank you so much for coming over. It's been really fun chatting with you. I enjoyed the 2 interviews I did with you as well. I'm going to also link them up if people want to watch them. And is there anything else you would like to say?
I think we've covered it off, Sarah. I think that's it. I just want to thank you once again for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. Cross-pollination is the way to make the world go round in terms of social media influence.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really do appreciate the opportunity to talk to your people, and maybe some of you might be interested to see what I do over there, and maybe want to hear me say short words, in which case you will. Lots of them over on my channel. See you over there.
A lot of fun over there. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bart. I will see you soon.
Pleasure. See you then.
Bye. See you.